All right, so I want to first say welcome aboard to Thursday Thoughts, sponsored by the South Carolina Association for Middle Level Education. My name is Sarah Evanson Atkinson, and I serve as the Professional Development Director for the organization. I'm very excited actually about tonight's webinar because for a lot of reasons, but not only is it something that's near and dear to my heart, but also I get very passionate about this topic. So I'm super excited to bring you some of the finest practitioners in this discipline to talk to you about this. This is really important. This is really important tonight, and so I'm super excited we're able to bring you this tonight. So as I said, I serve as the Professional Development Director for SCAMLE. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that you can find out all the latest and greatest of stuff that's going on with the organization at www.scamle.org. Remember, they are sponsoring this webinar, so it is free to you tonight. However, remember that our capstone takes place in March at our big conference, the first weekend of March. And if you haven't yet made plans to attend or to apply to present, please do that ASAP, because we need all the good talent we can find to bring the message that middle level and the unique needs of middle level education, they're a real thing, guys. They're a real thing. We are not elementary, and we are not high school kids. We serve a very unique slice of adolescence, and so we need to be sure that we get that message out to everyone who will listen. I thank you for your engagement with the professional development offerings from SCAMLE, and remember, again, check out all the latest and greatest, www.scamle.org. All right, so we're going to get right to it tonight. So I already introduced myself, but hey, what's the second introduction, right? Among friends. So my name is Sarah Evanson Atkinson, and I serve as the Professional Learning Director for SCAMLE. Just like you, I wear a ton of hats, right? I'm an instructional coach in my real life, a teacher, a mom, a sister, a daughter. I do all the things. And so please don't think for a second that I take for granted or don't notice that, this hour, really, we address it as a power hour. This is a power hour for professional development. We want you to be able to walk away from this with some things to think about, with some nuggets to ponder as you move forward as a practitioner, as a professional. And we want to make sure that you have access to these power hours of professional development. On with us tonight, Dr. McDonald will probably be on in a little while, I imagine. He is our current executive director. So feel free, of course, as always, to reach out to he or even to me if you want on email. And we are very, very responsive. I also want to welcome to the call tonight Mr. Jeff Jenkins. He's the president of the board, and so he is joining us on the call tonight as well. So today's work is an exercise in reflection and thinking. Remember that we cover a considerable amount of ground during these Thursday Thoughts webinars. And so your job in all of this is to really think and to reflect deeply. So if you're planning on taking notes, it probably won't work. You're going to have to make sure that you take a second look. You want to make sure that you give yourself time to process through and pause and really think about what it is that we're talking about today. So tonight we are talking ESOL. Now, depending on what corner you work in, some people still say ESOL, some people say ELL, some people say MLs. But any way you say it, any way you cut it, we are talking about how do you address the very unique needs of those students who are in our classrooms who have another language besides English that is their original home language. What is their L1? And so it doesn't matter to me, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but it doesn't matter to me if there's one person in the chair that has a different language, a different home language, a different language, first language than English, or if there is 30 rears in the chair that have a different first language, because the reality is that we have an obligation to meet the unique needs of all of our children. And so there's nothing wrong with a child who doesn't speak English as their first language. But the addition to that, is that there are strategies, there is science that tells us how we can develop language, teach our academic content simultaneously to help these students be successful in life moving forward. And so I got some special treats for you, but before I hand you over to them, I want to say this. So one of my favorite parts, I guess, of being a teacher is the diversity of the children in the seats. Right, so they all have different home experiences. They all have they have different levels of knowledge about where they come from, their histories. But each one of those young people has a story. And those stories are where we get to really know the young people sitting in the seats. And so as we talk about, all the best strategies and what the science says about language acquisition, I think it's important that we really make sure that our scope and our lens is wide enough to be able to understand the fact that every single one of these children, regardless of what their first language is, each one of them has a story, and each one of them has goals. Each one of them loves, each one of them gets angry, each one of them hates. We have to be sure that we're addressing the entire child, the entire child. And if we can speak their first language, awesome. And if we can't, we have to figure out pathways in. So we definitely are going to be addressing strategies, and these ladies have great strategies to give you. And there's tons of resources out there, but I think that it's really important for us to pause and really think about just take a self inventory a little bit about what our current attitudes are and what our current biases are toward the MLs who are sitting in our classrooms. And again, I said from the outset that it doesn't matter if there's 1 or if there's 30 and everybody speaks a different language and you've got 30 different languages sitting in those seats. We have to at least take a little bit of a self-inventory of where our attitudes and biases currently reside. Because those students have done nothing wrong. And our frustration at not being able to meet them where they are sometimes manifests in a really ugly way, frankly. Sometimes it manifests in us showing that when we really do love the children, we have to love the children, all of the children, even the ones who don't speak our language. Sometimes all they can do is smile at us, and we have to take that and we have to really absorb that. So I really want to encourage you to make sure that to sort of check yourself when you get frustrated, when you feel like you can't meet the needs of all the children. Don't take it out on them. We have to really take a self-inventory and really be aware of the fact that you wouldn't be angry with a child who has a reading deficiency. You don't get angry with a child who has trouble writing and has issues with processing. You wouldn't get angry with them. You might get frustrated with yourself or frustrated with them and the challenges that exist and the barriers that exist. But we don't get angry with them. And so we have to be sure that we really check our attitudes and our biases. Now, the last word on there is really important to me, and that's representation. Representation is so important. We have to think about what our classrooms look like. Now, remember, a large percentage, in fact, the vast majority of teachers in classrooms are female, and the vast majority of teachers in classrooms are white. Now, I'm not mad at myself. I'm a white woman now, but we have to be thoughtful about allowing for representation of all of our students in our classrooms. Because if students in our classrooms, one of the easiest ways for them to feel welcome, for all students to feel welcome in our classrooms, is for them to be able to see themselves in our classrooms. So they should be able to see themselves in whether it be posters on the wall, student work, exemplars. If we use videos as text, if we're looking at written text, are there main characters that represent multicultural, multiple students? They have to be able to see themselves in that classroom so that they can see themselves in their future with us. So representation is really important as we think about how what we do to really take care of our MLs, our students who don't speak English as their L1. So what I'm really talking about here, we're going to talk about strategies, I promise. But really, I want to be sure that everybody gets their head around the fact that really what we're talking about here is culturally responsive teaching. And that's heavy. That's heavy because here's the thing, everyone is asked, myself included, is asked to do all the things. I want you to write an SLO, I want you to write really great lesson plans, I want you to have lesson plans with 4 parts, I want you to read every different kind of text, I want you to show videos, I want you, they got to be engaged, make sure that you attach their SEL, make sure that I get it. This doesn't have to be one more thing, famous last words, I know, but it's important for us to put that layer of being culturally responsive in our teaching, and just as another layer of how we sort of operate and move about the world. I want you to take a look at this. It was food for thought for me, and I thought it was interesting.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Strategies for Culturally Responsive Teaching. How can teachers create a more inclusive environment? First off, teachers should get to know their students. This means knowing more about them than their academic strengths and weaknesses, but getting to know them on a personal level. Next, have high academic expectations for all students. Too often, teachers for some reason believe that ESL students aren't capable of learning because of their language barrier. This does a disservice to them. Provide opportunities for these students to speak English. The more opportunities and practice students have to speak English, the better they will become in speaking English. Encourage students to try their best in speaking. Display some of your students' culture in the classroom. For example, if you teach a classroom with mostly African American students, have up some posters of individuals such as Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks. Continuing, incorporate visuals into your lessons. Communication can get distorted between various cultures. However, there can be no confusion when everyone in the classroom is viewing the same thing. Incorporate a multicultural curriculum. This includes teaching from a curriculum that represents the cultural history of the students, and it highlights the most effective teaching methods. Hear your students' stories. Provide assignments such as culture studies where students can talk about their cultures and about themselves to the entire classroom. Next, work to build relationships with parents of your students. The research is out there. Parents of ESL students are not as involved as typical parents. And the last strategy, which is often overlooked, is to get your students' names right. That means being able to pronounce their names, because when you mispronounce their names, they get the feeling that you don't actually care about them. Right now, I would like to say thank you for...
Oh goodness, bless him. You should see this guy's channel. I love Frank. He loves doing these doodles. Nevertheless, notice something so simple as that final idea. Even if you say, Sarah, I don't really have a lot of power over what kind of multicultural curriculum. I already do have high academic expectations, but I'm not 100% sure how to implement those strategies to help them access the curriculum at high levels. What we can do though, guys, is we can make sure that we pronounce their names correctly. We can make sure we pronounce their names correctly. We can make sure that we give our students the chance to be a part of our learning community. And so super duper important. I wanted to share with you one text for tonight that I really enjoyed when I read it. It's brand new text, or relatively new text, called Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. And again, I wanted to be sure that I shared it with you. Excellent choice, and I'll drop it in the chat in just a little bit too if you're interested in learning more about culturally responsive teaching. Because does it incorporate the big moves? Yes, in part there are some big moves that we can do to be more culturally responsive, but there are also little things that we can do to make sure that we are creating an inclusive environment where everybody has a chance to feel like they're seen and heard and present and included. And so whether that be in all the different facets, right, that make us human beings and learners and as part of a community. So I wanted to share this text with you. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to share it with you. Okay, so Please help make tonight's guest, Dr. Valenti and Tammy Uria, feel welcome. I love these ladies. Can I just tell you, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, because if I did it, they'd be blushing. They'd be falling all over themselves. They'd be like, oh my gosh, Sarah, stop. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do and where they're of service and some of their experiences. And then I'm gonna turn it over to them and let them present to you some really quality content. Enjoy. Welcome aboard, ladies.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm gonna share my screen really quick so that we can start. All right, Jen, are you ready?
I'm good. Yeah.
Everybody can hear me? Yeah. Okay. I am Tammy Uria, and let me see if I can minimize. There we go. I don't want to see myself. I am Tammy Uria, or Tamara Uria, and I am an ESOL teacher at Greenville Middle Academy. I've been there this is my 8th year there, and before that I was an elementary teacher. I have really enjoyed the jump and the move to middle school. It's really, I found my niche. I found where I love to be. Middle school is a breed all of its own. So I really enjoy being there, and I really enjoy working with our MLLs. Sarah did mention the different labels. ESOL is basically what the teacher is. We teach English to speakers of other languages. The students themselves are called MLLs because many of them are learning many languages or know several languages. So we now have shifted to multilingual learners. So I am the ESOL teacher at Greenville Middle, and Jen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks. So Jen Valenti, I actually do belong in this party. I was a middle school teacher for 12 years, so I do have middle school experience. I was at Northwood as a Spanish teacher previously. I now shifted to ESOL about 10 years ago. This is year number 10. I started at Greenville Middle half-time with Eastside High School, and I have been at Eastside High School full-time for the last 8 years. So my BA was Spanish, so I do have a little bit of knowledge of both sides of the coin, learning an L1, but also what's it like to be a learner of an L2 as well. So year 26 for me, but I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having us.
Jen, I'm going to let you explain this video while I pull it up.
Okay.
While I try to get it to show here.
Perfect. I don't know if any of you have seen this or not. This is one of my all-time favorite videos. I share it with my faculty as well. I think it just really will set the stage for the mindset that we're hoping that you'll, kind of take in this presentation tonight. It's Moises in math class, and this I think gives a really honest representation of what our MLs feel most days in a lot of their classes. So Tammy, if you'll go ahead and play that.
All right. Before I go further, can you hear it?
Not yet.
Hold on. Were you guys able to hear it?
Nope.
Oh no. Hold on just a minute. Sorry. You saw it playing though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me get back to, sorry. So sorry.
No, you're good.
Back to my Zoom settings. I remember what I did. Okay, share sound. This should work.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
All week this week and
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
next week. The tests are going to be hard, but that's all right because we have testing all week this week and next week. The tests are going to be hard, but that's all right because we're going to try really hard. Isn't that right, Cameron?
Yes, Ms. Peters.
Okay, great. Everyone listen up. So we're going to want to work on we get ours from the answer and the information in the story, okay? We're going to go ahead and test, factual test, and try this actus test. Test your test. Open up. So we're going to page, go to 3. First on page 3.
¿Qué dijo? ¿A poco va a empezar el examen? No, es una práctica.
We're going to take notes from the story and we're going to turn it into a math problem and we're going to walk through it together, okay? So the boy ran 3 blocks. So everyone write 3 blocks.
I didn't even know. He looked like a stranger.
How long did it take him to run 3 blocks? Michelle?
6 minutes.
Very good, 6 minutes. All right, so then we're going to take 3 blocks and 6 minutes,
¿Por qué
right?
niño corre con los bloques? ¿Qué? Sí, porque el niño corre con los bloques. No,
Okay, so the
corre tres
question's then gonna
calles.
go on to ask us, how long will it take him to run 20 blocks? What do we do? How many minutes is that per block?
8 minutes.
Try and remember to raise your hand if you want to answer, okay? No, it's not 8 minutes. Michelle?
18 minutes?
Nope, not 18 minutes. Yes, Enrique?
40?
40, yeah, very good. How'd you get 40?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, 40 is the right answer. How did you get it?
I forgot.
You forgot. Okay. Does anyone know how we get 40? Yes, Moises.
¿40?
Yep, that's right. Very good. Great. Can you tell us how you got that?
40?
Yep, very good. But can you explain to the class what you did here, how you got that?
40?
Okay, all right, you guys, settle down.
That is so dumb.
Joe, do you want to lose your recess?
No.
Okay, then. Thank you, Moises.
Can you help me, please?
Can you take a walk with me? I don't want you to worry about the test, okay, Moises?
Sí, estoy preocupada sobre el examen. La directora Rosa dijo que todavía tenemos que hacer.
Just try your best, okay? Do you understand? Not importante.
Sí, sí es importante.
You're right, Moises. It is important.
Get gifting with Kohl's lowest prices of the season.
All right, let me put this back up. That is such a powerful video. Jen, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Did you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah,
before we-
I just wanted to make mention real quick, as you heard in the very beginning, where there's a lot of noise in the background and the speech is kind of going in and out in terms of what his experience is processing a language, when the words are dancing across the page, when he mentions blocks and he's thinking, he's looking around the room, and we talk about all the multiple meaning words that exist, and the word block in math is going to be different than the word block when you're just out shopping or giving directions. And so there's so many different things that our MLs are trying to balance. And you noticed in the video, he did know the answer. He knew 40, and the only thing that was preventing him from sharing his knowledge was strictly his language. And so we have MLs that are very intelligent and and they want to participate. Like you said at the end, yes, the test is important. They do want to do well. A lot of times the one thing that is holding them back is just that bridge, which is the English. And so that's what we're hoping to help you with tonight, is give you some strategies that can help kind of bring those students, your MLs, into the fold, allow them to be part of your classroom environment, and contribute, because they do have a lot to offer to our classrooms every day.
All right, so by the end of this, we hope that you'll be able to discuss a little bit of the background about MLLs in South Carolina, the stages of language development, and some of the best practices. We loaded this slideshow with resources that are just at your fingertips, so you should be able to use them. I think Sarah told us that she drops this into a folder at the end, so we wanted you to have access to it and be able to use it. But these are the three main things that we're going to focus on. So in South Carolina, MLLs, Jen and I were talking earlier, they only make up about I say only, but that's quite a bit. They make up about 6% of the population in schools. However, we were talking about, it just depends on where you are and the population there. For example, at our school, ours is about 17%, Jen's is about 20%. So you may have all different kinds of languages, and where I am, it's mostly Spanish, and where she is, I believe it's that she has different types of MLLs, different MLLs that speak different languages. So it just depends on where you are, but you can see that this population is fairly large for the students that are in our classrooms. In order to identify them as multi-language learners, the first thing that happens is when they enter into the school and fill out all the registration paperwork, which this may be very familiar to you, but we wanted to touch on it. Parents fill out the enrollment survey, and within that enrollment survey, there is an HLS, the home language survey, which I think asks 3 questions. And if any one of those 3 questions, their answer is anything other than English, or if it's English/Spanish, English/Chinese, then our clerks who enroll them, whoever's enrolling them, will let us know that we might have a new MLL student. And we, as a teacher, would then do some investigation and figure out whether they're transferring in from another district, if they were an MLL student at one point, if they have exited, if they no longer are. And a lot of times the ones that are brand new to the country, they will get a screener, which helps us to identify what level of language they are. It has 4 parts, which is the test also that we give at the end, similar to the test we give at the end of the year, which is the WIDA Access. The screener has the same parts: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. It's all in English. You know, these students are not speaking that much English when they first arrive to us, but this screener is in English. We give it to them and it gives us their language levels. And from there, we decide what is the best service delivery model for them. And Jen's going to tell you a little bit about these.
And just a real quick touch on this. I don't know how many people know this. I was explaining this to a colleague the other day. So the access that we give February and March, it is, like Tammy says, it's all in English, so there's no language support there. But I want everyone to understand that when you guys are getting language proficiency scores from your ESOL teachers, that is based on the test that is actually assessing the language of math, the language of science, the language of reading. It is a very, very academic test. I've told people before, I would venture to guess that we have some American K-12 students who would probably also qualify for ESOL services. It's a pretty rigorous test for them. And so it is very, very intensive on academic language is what we're going to focus on tonight. And so as Tammy mentioned, and I'm not sure if everybody in the meeting is with Sarah at her school at Ralph Chandler, but I know the 3 standard models. These are definitely the most popular. Class period, which is what I do. At Eastside, we do not have push-in or co-teaching. So my students, we have another ESOL teacher that I work with as well. We both have classes where the kids come in every day, and we provide obviously our language instructional lesson plans, are really geared towards the levels that we do have in our room. We are fortunate enough at the high school to be able to have them separated in our class periods by levels. I know that doesn't always work in a middle school, just simply because of the structure of the schedule with related arts. So you may have another model. You might have a push-in model where the ESOL teacher goes into the classroom and they are simply there for support. They are not doing the actual instructional delivery, but they are in the room to help support the MLs who are there. And then some of you may be in a school setting where co-teaching does take place. I have not been trained in co-teaching, but as far as the concept goes, that is where the ESOL teacher and the core content teacher do sit and they plan with intentionality in terms of addressing the language needs of the students, the MLs that are in their classroom. And so as they're developing the lessons and the assessments, they are taking into account the actual proficiency, English proficiency levels of the MLs in their room. So I'm going to take on learning target number 2, just again, briefly touching on this. A lot of you, if you're in the classroom, you know a lot of this already. So as far as the WIDA language levels go, you know, you have a student, you know, we throw around numbers a lot. Oh, he's a 3.2, she's a 2.5. Oh, this one's a 5.5. But unless you really know what that means and what it means, especially in terms of ability, then those numbers don't mean a whole lot. So number 1 is a student who is entering, just beginning. Those would be our newcomers. Then we go emerging, developing. I would say for the high school, for us, and I would assume this is relatively accurate for middle school as well, we tend to serve students, MLs from the 1 to 3 level, mid 3s. We look at a literacy composite score for them. And then an ML at a 4, 5, and 6 are consultative, and they more than likely don't have an actual entire ESOL class period. And that does vary school to school, depending on how many ESOL teachers you have. And again, I think this might be a quick review. I'll try and do it quickly, but I do think it's really important. You may have heard Bix and Calc before. It's been around for a long time, almost my entire life. Jim Cummings, 38 years or so, he's been talking about Bix versus Calc. But I think it's really important when we talk about multilingual learners, because it couldn't be any further from the truth. They're not just learning English. Learning English, there's a lot to English, a lot to language. It's like two types of languages, if you'll think about it that way for a minute. So Bix is your basic interpersonal communication. So, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How's your family? So a lot of times I've had colleagues come and say to me, oh, they're faking. They know what they're doing. I hear them talking in the hallway all the time. Well, you're hearing them in a very non-academic setting. And so they're using that basic interpersonal communication skills that they do acquire and are the ones they acquire first. Usually they're picked up within 6 months to 2 years of being here. So I've had students, and I still do at our high school, who sound very fluent, if you will, in English, even though they've been in the country for a limited amount of time. Me being fluent in Spanish is very different than me being able to go sit in university and study and be successful, even though I have studied for Spanish for a long time. My cognitive academic language, there's things I've never studied in Spanish and would have no idea how to say, even though I've studied for over 20 years. So there's a big difference between Bix, basic interpersonal skills, and Calc, the cognitive academic language, which is what we do with them. They're not just coming in your room and learning, how to say hi and how was your weekend. I mean, there is a language of, the science, the English, anybody who's sitting in the meeting today, the language of math, and that vocabulary, definitely varies from classroom to classroom. And in one room, it might mean one thing. And when I go to another room as an ML, it might mean something totally different. So understanding that cognitive academic language takes 5 to 7 years to develop in terms of fluency. In middle school and especially in high school, we are a little bit at a disadvantage in the sense that the sake of time is not on our side. We don't have 5 to 7 years to get them up to full fluency. Most of them will be graduated by that point in time. So it takes a lot of supports and being very intentional about the supports you choose in order to allow them to be successful. And also gain and grow their vocabulary, not just socially, that will come, but that academic language development is critical. And that's kind of why we're here tonight.
If you've been around for a minute, I'm sure you've heard of the can-do philosophy, but for ESOLs, for MLLs, I'm still getting used to saying MLLs. For MLLs, it's pretty much the belief that they have a lot to offer, which is very accurate. They have a lot to offer, and it's what Sarah was mentioning earlier about being culturally responsive when we teach, because they bring so much knowledge of their own into our classroom. So the can-do philosophy is just saying, use what they can do and not focus on what they're not able to do, because in their own way, they are very intelligent and they do know a lot of different things. They just might not be able to express it in the language that we know. But that in no way means that they're behind or that they're, a little bit slower learning. They're taking on a lot. They're learning a language, they're learning content. So if we could really shift our mindset to think about all the things that they can do and begin to use that. And, when thinking of assignments, when thinking of tasks, it would really change the way that probably they would feel a little bit more successful in our classrooms. Along those lines, the can-do descriptors are linked here. I'm afraid to minimize my show. I'm afraid I'm going to lose it again. But the can-do descriptors, if you click on that picture in the slideshow, it will take you right here, and they're listed here by grade level, by grade bands. And the name charts are really helpful too. I've pulled it up here just for you to see, but if you are given at the beginning of year a list of EL students, ML students and their levels, like Jen was saying, if that could be a foreign language to you, if you're new or if you've just never had a student that speaks another language, once you're told what those levels are, then you can place your student by name in these, and right here when you're planning are the things that they are able to do. So that's how you can focus on what you're going to do for them. So if you look at a level 1 student in speaking, they can answer the WH questions, who, what, when, where. Those are the types of questions they can answer. So you can understand that when we're asking them to discuss some scientific concept, I don't know that that's really realistic, and expecting them to discuss with their partner when right in here it says that they're able to answer the who, what, when, where questions. So they can still participate. We just need to gear our assignments or craft our assignments and tasks for them in that way. But again,
can I say something real fast?
Yeah.
I just want to say on that chart too, I try and make a point to emphasize to my colleagues that if you have a task, it's one way to kind of do a self-check, because you can literally physically go, if you're a visual learner, if you put their names next to those levels, and you can kind of look across, okay, well, here's my assignment for today. And I'm going to ask my kids what I'm going to really require is that they be able to do X. But if you look on the chart and you can see clearly, like Tammy just mentioned, well, that what I'm asking them to do, it's telling me here that that is above or beyond their linguistic ability at the moment. One of two things really needs to happen. You either need to shift the expectation in terms of what you're asking them to produce, and or you need to make sure that you are putting in place the scaffolds. If you're differentiating, whatever, take your buzzword, whatever you're doing, you have to make sure you're putting the supports in place that they can actually achieve the task that you are setting in front of them. It's not enough to just accommodate an assessment, because if you're only accommodating an assessment, then they've not had any support and they've not been able to acquire any of your content that you've delivered for the entire unit. And so having this visually there to kind of as a reference, okay, and what I'm asking, you know, Jose or Juan or Senor or whoever to do today, is that in line with where they are? Can they do this? And if they can't, I'm not saying scrap it, but just make sure you're making a very intentional, conscious effort to make sure that you are putting them with someone to work with, or you're accommodating the assignment for them, giving them access to what you're asking them to do. And that if we can kind of not look at them in a deficit manner, but really start looking at them at what they can do with the correct supports, then I think, again, that shift in thinking will occur. Sorry, thank you, Tam.
And
No, that's okay.
Jen and Tammy, I also want to emphasize something that Jen just said. So it's not enough just to accommodate the assessments. It's not enough just to accommodate the assessments. So when, you know, when Moise is in the video, when he says, can I please have the test in Spanish? That is actually really reflective on his side, because he knows the content. He knew the math. He could figure out how to figure out the math. So, but so many of our students are sitting in the seats and they crave the content. They crave what we're delivering. It's not enough just to accommodate on the assessments. We have to build scaffolds and supports for them along the way. So by the time the assessment comes, which may look different than their colleagues, they have the content knowledge that's required for that assessment. And I want to just echo that, because I think it's just terribly important. A lot of times we wait till we get to the big test and then we think, well, we did it, right? We accommodated on the assessment. You've just been hanging out with me. We don't learn that way.
Yeah. Yes. And we're going to hit a little bit more on that in just a few minutes, but she's exactly right. It has to be accommodated, modified all throughout instruction. And we'll talk about how translating something is not exactly the way to do it, although it is very helpful, but we'll talk about in that in a minute. These next couple of, this slide and the next one, are directly cut from the can-do descriptors. And because I know we do in middle school a lot of text-dependent analysis, this is the argumentative section. So if you look at a level 1 student, the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 student. And let me reiterate that a level 1 student would be a 1.0 to a 1.9. However, that doesn't mean they're stuck in this one column of the chart. If I have a 1.8 student who I know I can push a little bit, then I'm going to be looking at the level 2 column, or maybe possibly even think about maybe something in the level 3 column. It's all based on the student. So it goes back to knowing your students, just knowing who's in your classroom. So, but if you do look very quickly in reading at a level 1, students can identify words and phrases associated with a topic. So in science, if we're talking about ecosystems, they might be able to identify different vocabulary words. You know, not take a whole assessment test and try to decipher what words are where. We're talking about like academic vocabulary. We can identify some of those words. They can also maybe answer short, simple, true or false sentences. Whereas a level 3 might be able to identify a claim and then give you a reason for the claim. It might not be in the perfect paragraph form, but the fact that they can identify and give you a reason is something we need to celebrate and we need to try to assess. In writing, when they're writing, you can see that a level 1 can generate words and phrases. They can make lists. So we shouldn't have level 1s writing paragraphs, really. And a level 3 in English, by the way, a level 3 can give you their opinions and give you examples and give you evidence. It doesn't mean that we're not teaching level 1s how to do that. They're participating in class and they're listening where they see students pulling text evidence, or they see a teacher modeling how to get text evidence, and they will get there eventually. But to assess them on that, they're not ready for that quite yet. Jen is going to talk to you a little bit about our third learning target, which is probably what you're most here for, our resources and best practices.
Yeah, and I am going to jump back real fast to what Tammy just talked about. When you're talking about writing, if you're curious and you really want to know what they can write, then have them write in their L1, have them write in their first language. You know, I see it a lot with my colleagues. They're like, oh, well, they can translate it. They can just click the button in, you know, Google Doc. Well, then I would venture to throw that back on you as the adult and as the educator. If you have them write in their L1, you could click the button as well, and you can revert it for yourself to kind of see what can they produce? How do they think? And for me, it's a very rich activity. There's times when I've met kids and I've let them do that, and for a Vietnamese speaker or a Chinese speaker, and I've been really, it allows you to kind of get a sense of their thought process, how they do craft language and their creativity. And so again, we oftentimes put the onus on the child to do that. I think as the adults, again, as the professionals and the educators, it's our job to kind of do the same. And we have a ton of stuff in here, like Tammy mentioned. So I know we're getting close to the end of our hour, so I talk fast naturally, but I'm also gonna make sure that I would try and hit the high points. So on the previous screen, there is a link to this where you'll get this presentation. Valentina Gonzalez is one of the gurus in ML education. These are 22 things right off the top of the bat. Don't take a lot of effort and energy, but things that you can take a look at and reference that can again, talking about that culturally responsive teaching, helping those kids feel included. I've always said that. Even when I taught Spanish middle school, they were scared. They didn't want to be embarrassed. They didn't want to sound funny, just like our MLs who are learning English. But I would tell my colleagues, I'm like, I feel like once kids trust you, you can ask them to do anything. You can take them anywhere and they will follow you because they have that trust. And so building that with our MLs is equally as important. On the next slide, this is again a little bit of a challenge. It's kind of a quote that's been going around for about the last year or so, but I do think drives home if you do have time and sit and reflect on this. Quite simply, if a child doesn't learn or can't learn the way we teach, then maybe we should teach the way that they learn. So again, shifting that onus from the child to us as a professional, but also shifting away from a very deficit perspective that a lot of times we do look at our MLs with. I'm good, thank you. So again, from kind of a recap of all these things we've been talking about before we get into the strategies, just make sure you know your MLs. Like Sarah mentioned in the beginning, it is so important. A lot of the kids are missing their home countries. You know, some of them didn't ask to be here. Some of them definitely wanted to be in the United States. There's a lot happening besides just being a normal teenager or preteen in the middle school years. So there's a lot going on. Know their language level, know what that means. Don't just, you know, a 2.5 or a 3.4, don't have no idea about what that is. Kind of educate yourself on that if you haven't been exposed before. Sarah's mentioned the culturally responsive teaching before. Differentiate, modify, accommodate the content according to language level, of course. The ILAP, there are some links, really, really good links there that Tammy has put for you on the accommodation and the ILAP there. So I hope you'll take some time to go back to this slide. And lastly, I hope all of you do have an ESOL teacher in your building who you can go to ask questions that you feel comfortable saying, you know, I just don't know. I feel like a lot of times my teachers say, oh, I know what to do. I've got it. And I think as educators and professionals, sometimes we think we should know. We should already know what to do. But if you don't, please just be honest and just say, hey, I really want to help this kid out. I just don't really know where to start. Can you help me? So I think pretty crucial relationship to build.
It is. And we welcome those questions. We welcome those questions, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. The ESOL teachers that I know for sure. So please do, but also know too that it is something that needs to be happening in their content classes. The ESOL teacher, we have our own curriculum that we have to teach. So it's not something that we can always do for you. It has to be a collaborative effort. So that's what it's very important to talk to your ESOL teacher. So some of I tried to take those 22 things that Valentina had, best practices, and condense it to one slide. There are a few links here, just so you know, whenever you're looking through this on your own. The most important thing, which was mentioned in the video that Sarah showed, is family connections. And I know that can be intimidating in and of itself with English speaking families to reach out to parents and to reach out to families to discuss a student. And it can be even more intimidating when there's a language barrier. However, there are so many resources out there, Talking Points being one of my favorites. It's basically a messaging app that translates your message. It's free for teachers, translates your message into whatever language you assign that parent, whatever language is their first language. And then when they respond in that language, it translates it back to English. It's just an excellent resource. And of course, you don't want to start the connection with a negative. That's best practice in education in general. You want to start it, with a positive. I've enjoyed getting to know your student. And then when there is a harder topic to discuss, it makes them more receptive to what you have to say. In Greenville County, we use Language Line too, which is a great resource. I'm not sure, the range of teachers on this call, but Language Line is a great resource. And Google Translate is not always accurate. However, if you need to send an email, don't be afraid to use it. Parents appreciate the effort. Just like when they might send something into the school in Spanish, we try to translate it the best that we can. We try to do, the best that we can. It's the same for them. They're going to break down what you said and they're going to figure it out, but they're going to, above all, appreciate the effort that you're reaching out to them. They want to hear from their child's teachers, not just one, not just the principal, but all the teachers. One of the biggest things I think is visuals, and this kind of goes along with the third one, teacher model, because that is very visual. But I'm not going to read all those to you. One of the best things I have found this year, or in the past couple of years, is a document camera where I can actually model what I want them to do and show them exactly what is expected of them. We do it together. The I do, then we do it, and then you do it, releasing that to them. It's so powerful for them to see it and leave it up. And if the newcomers are copying for the first few weeks, that's okay. That's okay. They're practicing, they're learning, they're writing some of the words that they're gonna come to know and see frequently. Scaffolding is pretty much everything we've discussed besides the family connection, but up until this point, that's what showing visuals, that's what showing a teacher model is. Chunking assignments, those kind of things, using graphic organizers. You're just adding some support for the students to complete the things that you want them to do. Word banks, guided notes, notes that just have a blank that they have to fill in. Those are all scaffolding techniques that will help them really not be so worried about getting everything and just focusing, like it gives them the kind of tunnel vision on what they really, really need to focus on. And that's so helpful. And then of course, groups are partnered. The one thing I do want to caution you about is make sure that you're intentional with your grouping instead of just saying, all right, get with who you want. Which I know sometimes is good, giving them some choice is good. But with our MLs, we need to be intentional, and we don't always need to pair them with someone that translates for them, because sometimes that can be a hindrance. They're not being forced to learn. They're not being forced to communicate with someone who speaks differently than, it's a different language than them. And you obviously don't want to do that in the beginning. That's very welcoming when they can speak to someone in their own language. But eventually you want them to be grouped and partnered with somebody who might speak English, and they figure things out together and they're having to learn from each other. That's very, very helpful. Always providing sentence frames, discussion frames, those are always good. And again, linked in this slide. Jen, we have
I'll piggyback on that. Struggle is good. I mean, we learn when we struggle. Now we have to, obviously balance that for our MLs. It can't be too much of a struggle. We can't kind of, like we said, fast forward and ask them to do things that are too far above their English language proficiency level. But there does need to be that comprehensible input +1, right? So that's been around, that idea theory has been around for a long time. There does need to be that little bit of a struggle. So I agree with Tammy on not always having that there, and the scaffold is there for a reason. You scaffold that back over time. On this page, these are easy like no cost, kind of not a lot of energy, don't take planning. I'm going to talk about the first one. When you simplify language, that doesn't mean talk louder. A lot of people, I hear that happen in the hallways. My teachers, just their voice volume level goes up. I'm like, that doesn't help comprehension. But speaking slower, repeating yourself, really being intentional and avoiding the use of idioms or things that have multiple meanings, trying to simplify language so that, or saying it, restating it in ways that might, use a cognate if you're not aware of cognates in a Spanish language or something, but restating a lot of times you'll get your point across. Chunking assignments, which Tammy has already mentioned, checking in, just stopping by and just asking me if they have questions, just making sure they feel seen and making sure that they understand that you want them to be successful. It goes a long way when a child feels welcome and they feel seen and they feel valued in the classroom. We've touched on a lot of these. Extended time is a natural one if they need it. I say that sometimes teachers can have a hard time with that. You have to step back for a second and try and put yourself in their shoes. You're not just learning content, you're also having to access that content through a language that is new to you. So it is almost like a double learning. You're having to also learn language while you're acquiring a content as well. It doubles the task for them. So really trying to pare that down to what is essential for them is important. Reducing answer choices. And I say that I have, again, high school teachers who have a hard time with that. Well, there's already 3 choices. If I take one away, they just have to guess. Well, true. Yeah, you can say that, but you also have to realize if you have 4 answer choices, 3 answer choices, they're still having to take the time if they're really trying to weed through the language of those 3 answer choices. Whereas if you can take it down to 2, then you're reducing the quantity of time they're having to take through the quantity of the language that you're putting in front of them. So you have to take all those kind of things into consideration. On the following slide, this one is probably my favorite slide. There's a ton of things here. The ones that are hyperlinked are underlined. I've starred my favorites. I can't emphasize enough the importance of images and photos. Giving a kid a list and just saying, well, translate this vocabulary list. Oh, great. Translators aren't always accurate, but if you put an image, images are universal. An elephant is an elephant. Doesn't matter what language you speak. A telescope is a telescope. Again, no matter what language you speak. And so images, I tend to value these way, way more than I do just giving a kid the assignment of just translating. If you're going to make them do that, give them the word. If you can provide the translated list for them, fine, but have them illustrate. Visuals are so powerful. There's a great article, and I'm not going to have her open it up for the sake of time, but the intentional use of color. English teachers especially, I think, will find that valuable. We've talked about repeat and rephrase. Say it over and over and over again. Again, not just for your MLs, probably for a lot of the other kids in your room as well, especially middle schoolers. Get them up and moving. That's a good practice just for anybody. Cognates, if you, again, need some help, there's some links there. My favorite one is actually the bilingual glossaries, which I will have her pull up in a moment. Sentence frames, there's a great resource attached there. The paragraph frames, again, for writing, if you need even some ideas that could be adapted to lots of content areas. Think alouds and modeling there on the bottom, I think are really crucial, like Tammy mentioned earlier. A lot of times, again, good practice for any kid, any grade. Think alouds. We have to teach our kids a lot of metacognition. How do you think? What does that look like? What does it sound like? I do it a lot with my MLs. We process a lot. I love the question why. I ask why so many times, they get so sick of it. They'll say a beautiful answer and I'll say, okay, now add this because, and they're like, oh, I'm like, but because gives me so much language. And so ask them why, have them extend it, but model sentence frames, model sentence, chunk the language for them, give them the supports they need to be able to really express what they want to say. In our PD the other day, I had some colleagues talking about that, and we mentioned sentence frames. And a lot of times my MLs will say to me, I'll ask, even in my classroom, I'll ask them a question and they're quiet and I'll say, well, just, they're like, I don't know. I'm like, do you not know, or do you not know what to say? And they're like, I don't know how to start. And I hear that a lot. I don't know how to start. So if I give them the beginning, if I give them the sentence frame, if I give them the language they need to begin their answer, a lot of times they have a lot to say. They just are reserved and they don't know how to get started. And so even, again, for your shy kids, same thing would be true. But just give them those chunks they need to be able to participate in class and feel a part of the community. Lastly, I do want to point out really fast those bilingual glossaries. This is from the state of New York. Again, for any content area that's in here, if you scroll down for me, Tammy, please keep going a little bit more. So if you'll notice, this one is ELA, glossaries by language. If you continue down, there's also math glossaries. And if you continue down, middle school math is also there, high school algebra, geometry, if you have some upper levels. And I found this really, there's science glossaries, really in most any language we would encounter. I thought this was a fantastic resource if you hadn't found it yourself already. And I just wanted to make sure I pointed it out. So again, elementary social studies, which if you're talking about scaffolding and you need to start a little bit more of a basic vocabulary set, give them the elementary list. But I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out, and I didn't want anyone to miss that. And so I think Tammy's going to show you some really great visual representations of what scaffolding is going to look like.
And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because you guys will have this slideshow, but basically it shows you what like a level 1 assessment to a level 3 in the same content, the same concept might look like. So a lot of times teachers want, examples of what that looks like. So these are some really great examples of that when you look at it. And then we just added in some of our personal favorite resources and websites for you to have. And that's it. There's a video there that there's just some extra slides at the end for you to look through. But I know time is up, and we were worried about filling it.
You guys are funny. Hey, can you go back to the example that you had of the assessment? I want to talk through that because I think that's of value here. We have a couple more minutes. All right, so I want to take a look at the differentiated assessment example. So a lot of times, especially, by the way, we do this a lot as teachers, right? We'll say, I need to show me what it looks like. I want to see the example. And we have to remember to do that for our kids too, by the way. So that's really important because we as teachers do it all the time to each other. But I want to point out a couple of things. So I want you to see that these assessments, they are assessing the student's knowledge of content, okay? And the how they are doing it is based upon the student's ability linguistically. So that's two different things that are happening simultaneously. So technically, you should be able to, with these differentiated assessments, get at, are they having trouble with the content? Did they miss that instructional part and they don't understand how the earth spins and what this looks like and all of this? Or are they having a linguistic difficulty? Really important that we sort of delineate between those two things. And I really loved the visual of this assessment example because I think it cuts to the issue, is that we can't just take a Sharpie marker to our assessments and eliminate some choices and say, done deal, we're out of here. So I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. And there is
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you're go ahead.
That's it. I was just going to say there's another one if they wanted to look through that as well. Yeah. That's it.
Awesome. All right, so I've got 6:59 and 30 seconds, so I'll make my closing thoughts tonight really quick. I want to draw your attention to a couple things. First, I want to say thank you to Dr. Valenti and Ms. Tammy Uria for joining us tonight on this call. I've known these ladies for a while, and the work that they do is exemplary, it's thoughtful, it's intentional, and I appreciate them for what they do because it is an art. It is an art. When you have a child who's terrified, who's new to country, and these women work magic, and they work magic on the daily, y'all. They work magic on the daily. So thank you for what you do. We appreciate you. So my final thoughts for tonight are actually really more of I want to encourage you to take 3 deep breaths. Sometimes when we have these power hours, you look at this and you go, oh my gosh, but I only have one student who's in my class who doesn't speak English and is new to country. And it's just, I'm supposed to do all these things. I'm supposed to do all these changes for that one student. And I would challenge you to shift your thinking a little bit, that when we can grow into culturally responsive practitioners, the shift, the pivot for that one child or the 30 children or any number in between won't feel so disastrously, horrific, because we will know that it's simply the right thing to do. And that that there are strategies that can streamline this work, and I want to make sure that we really take a moment to focus on making sure that we focus on what our students in the seats, regardless of what their L1 is, what they can do, what they're able to do, and all of the things and gifts that they bring to the academic table and the social table in our learning communities. So we're all a valuable part of the communities, and so are they. So love on these babies, love on all your babies. Tomorrow's Friday, y'all. We made it. Oh my goodness gracious, I didn't think it was going to happen. All right, so again, I want to say thank you to our presenters for tonight. A magnificent resources there. Please don't forget, in the chat I dropped the link to the Google form. Remember, this time only, when you fill out the Google form, not only the feedback form, not only will you receive your certificate, but you'll also receive a link to this presentation. So you'll have all of this at your fingertips. And certainly there's some great stuff, and you can take it back to the colleagues who are watching later, or if you just need to open up some minds, we can do that too. We're good at that. So please share this information. It's so important. I officially want to say thank you to SCAMLE for their continued sponsorship of these webinars. Without them, this can't be possible. And I want to encourage you to check out www.scamle.org for all the latest, greatest information about all the things that we do with the organization. Also, remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a safe and happy evening, and I wish you all the best. Thank you all so much.